All right, having fun on a Saturday morning. This is Eddie Huff with my sidekick and co-host and
smile
nemesis, David Van.
Yeah.
And you know what, Dave? It might help if
there we go. Welcome.
Welcome to Fresh Black Coffee. I should have had my coffee. I didn't have any coffee at the breakfast this morning. Yeah, I didn't have it. I get migraines, so it's not when I have it, it's when I don't. It's the withdrawal from caffeine. I can't. Two of my favorite things: coffee and chocolate. Yeah. And they're like kryptonite to me. But I, who can resist, right? So exactly. And then my wife helps out. She comes home. Oh, hey, I got you a new half-gallon of Rocky Road.
Is it because the abundance of revelation that was giving you a thorn in the flesh? Is that what this is?
That may be. That may be. I have enough thorns, though. I think I can probably do with a few more. So.
Guilty.
Anyway, Dave, why don't you introduce our guest today?
Today's theme is finding new state leaders, and we've got a double stack. And starting with former Senator Jake Merrick from Oklahoma City, kind of actually straddling over to Canadian County. I remember you.
Right. I'm in Grady right now, but I was in Canadian County.
Right?
Yeah, when I served, I was in Canadian County. We recently, in the last couple of years, moved down to Grady County. So Tuttle, Oklahoma, that's where we're at.
All right.
Yep.
So anyway, and then later in the show, we'll have Justin Hornbeck, who's running also statewide campaign for Corporation Commission. So buckle in, folks. It's going to be a big day.
Justin's already here. He's sitting in our waiting room, our lavish waiting room that we have over there, drinking some spices and
here we go, fresh black coffee.
So fresh black coffee. Yeah, we won't name what kind, but anyway, hey, welcome.
Thank you. Welcome. It's good to be here.
And so you have. Or about to throw your hat into the ring.
Official. That's right. I've already kind of unofficially announced a couple of months ago. I let it rip that I would be running for governor. And the plan has always been to, from the beginning, to stay on my radio show as long as possible. I've hosted the Jake Merrick Show on 96.9 FM for 2.5 years and have a ton of fun doing it. Had Justin on just the other day as well. And get to do what you guys do, interview guests. And I tell you what, I learn something every time. And it's been a sharpening season for me, learning more about different areas of government, more policy issues. And anyway, been doing that. I love it, but it's reached a point where I believe it's necessary to go ahead and file. I was going to not file and stay on my show as long as possible. Because I love it, but also it's a great platform to be a voice in the state, to address state issues. And I wanted to keep that, but I feel like I need to give my supporters the confidence that I'm fully in. And so I want to go ahead and file, throw my hat fully in, and let them know that, hey, there's no ifs, ands, or buts for me. I'm fully in this fight for Oklahoma and for the people. So I will be filing at the end of the month, June 30th. And that means my deal with the station is that when I become a legally qualified candidate, then I will leave the show, not put them at risk for any lawsuits for equal time for any of the other candidates. So I'll leave the show and then I'll devote my full time to the Jake for the State podcast. And I have another show I'm going to be ramping up and we'll be traveling the state.
Good.
Jake for the State.
That's right.
That.
Yeah, right.
It sounds good.
It has a ring to it.
Yeah. So you have been in the State House.
In the Senate. Yeah.
I'm sorry, State Senate. Yeah. And now, what I'm trying to couch this in a situation where, because I just got through listening to you.
Right.
We had breakfast.
Yeah, we had breakfast all of us together, this big gathering. But anyway, if you want to summarize, encapsulate what you're really wanting to do differently than what is being done right now. And some of the issues that we face or people, our representatives face there in the State House.
Right. And for those listening, they didn't see your air quotes there, but I agree. The quote unquote representatives, I would like to see a day where our elected representatives in our constitutional representative republic actually represent the people who elected them, and not the corporate interest, not the big lobbying groups, but the people of Oklahoma. And I think that's actually what the people of Oklahoma want. When I talk to people around the state, they feel left out. They feel like, does it even matter? My vote, we have people door knocking. We talk to them at the door. They make big promises. We see their flashy mailers that make all these big promises, but they get into office and then we never see or hear from them again. Mm-hmm. And for that reason, a lot of people, they stop voting altogether. There's a hopelessness that I think has settled in around the state. You look at the voter turnout, and that just tells the story. Mm-hmm. You always have just a fraction of the population showing up to vote. And I think it's easy to see why, because they're saying, what does it matter? They all get in, they all become the same. Uniparty has been the key word that I'm hearing over and over again. Mm-hmm. I'm hearing people say, you know what? We can't talk about Democrat and Republican anymore. It's a uniparty. They get in, and essentially they're all on the same team working together, and it has nothing to do with what the people actually want. And I think it's time to change that. It's going to take someone who's outside the system. And one might say, well, aren't you in the system? Well, I was in the Senate for a term and a half. I went in and filled the remainder of Stephanie Bice's term when she was elected. Got in there long enough to see how things worked and learned, but thankfully not long enough to be changed. And I would say this, everyone is susceptible to corruption. And anyone who comes in with the pride or arrogance to think that they are incorruptible, well, you're most likely to be corrupted. Be careful of him who thinks he stands lest he falls, the Bible says. And so I was asked that question when I was running in my last campaign. They said, how do we know that you won't change? I said, you don't. You don't. Anybody could be corrupted. And so that's why we have to constantly put ourselves before God, be accountable to him first, and then to the people. One of the ways I want to give people confidence that I am all about them is I'm not going to take any lobbyist or special interest money. No PAC money. There's some good PACs out there. I'm not going to take any money from any PAC or special interest group. The reason I'm doing that is because I want people to know that I'm different and I really am in this for them. In the end, if elected, I want to be accountable to God and the people of Oklahoma, no special interest parties.
Let's clarify something on that.
Yeah, please.
Because it's one thing for the campaign to receive donations.
Yeah.
But it's another thing, and something you won't be able to stop. It is third-party campaign expenditures.
Dark money.
Yeah.
Yeah. People spending money to influence the election.
Right.
But by law, they can't have any coordination.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So you just need to put that out there right now. Say, well, he lied. He said he wasn't going to take it. And then I got this mailer.
No, I'm so glad you brought that up. I was asked that at Mays County GOP when I spoke there just a few days ago. And the question was, will you let these third party groups, as dark money groups, will you tell them not to put anything out there for or against you?
That's a violation.
Well, here's what I said. Who are they? Nobody knows who they are. If I knew who was behind the dark money, then maybe I could go and communicate that message to them. But oftentimes they're dark because they're in the shadows and we don't even know who's behind these groups.
Yeah. But if you have a direct message to them, then you are violating ethics by communicating, coordinating.
Yeah. I knew nothing about dark money until I ran for Senate in my first race. And suddenly the night before the election, a text went out to everyone in my district on my behalf.
Yeah.
It was a very positive text, actually helped me out.
Yeah.
And everybody started calling me saying, hey, did you send that text out? I'm like, what are you talking about? And looked at my phone. I got one too, and realized, wow, somebody is out there on my behalf. I later found out who it was. Mm-hmm. And this was after I was elected. They said, hey, just so you know, we sent that text out. Mm-hmm. I was like, why?
Yeah.
Well, we wanted you in and we couldn't coordinate with you. We're one of these 501c4 organizations. And so we couldn't coordinate with you. We had to do this without your knowledge. And so I knew nothing about it. And what's interesting, though, is after I had a very consequential vote and controversial vote in the Senate, that same group sent out another text against me.
Yeah.
So they may be for you one day, but they can very quickly turn on you the next time.
Yeah. And I want to say something else on that. Our friend of the show, Matt Pinnell, when running for lieutenant governor, one of his, rivals in the primary was Dana Murphy. In the middle of her term, in Corporation Commission. And Matt told me, he said, here's the thing. She's getting tons of money from executives for oil companies and all these people that she regulates. And he said, you can't tell me this isn't quid pro quo, because if she's unsuccessful here, stays in Corporation Commission, you can get retribution for not paying up. And it's almost, he didn't use the word extortion, but it looks close to that for me. And I know later in the day, in this show, we're going to have Justin address some of those things, but that's another way that money can corrupt.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is the factor, is the money factor. And it's also how a lot of people tend to qualify their candidates. First question you're asked, especially in a statewide race like for governor, is how much money do you have? And I understand the concern. It's like, can you reach the state? Can you get your messaging out? Whether we like your message or not, you have to reach the people with it. And so there has to be a strategy. If you're going to go on a low budget campaign like I am, not depending on the millions like some of the other candidates have, then you have to have a different strategy. We have a different strategy that is in place. We have a lot of support that I believe the money will be there as we need it. But our goal is not to raise up this huge war chest. We're going to have a very specific focus, and we'll raise money as we need it. But it's interesting, though, that the money factor becomes a big qualifier as to whether or not people support you or not. And I would like to take that factor out and say, hey, what's the substance of what you're standing for? Let's base the decision and a vote on that rather than how much money you have. So,
how much money do you have? Just kidding.
Well, somebody bought my breakfast this morning, so I was thankful for that.
Oh, so there you go. I just had are they going to report it?
Yeah, exactly. We'll report everything. Right?
Yeah. No, but yeah. So you have your platform, things that you want to see done and go for, obviously. Now, a strong part of your candidacy is your faith-based background.
Absolutely.
Okay. And the organization that you have, do you feel that will help the network? I mean, is it statewide, national? Because, you're going to run against a mega campaign from the Attorney General.
Right.
I think they're looking at
Charles McCall.
$100 million.
Yeah. And Mike Mazzei has a big war chest as well. A lot of support. So
not
nearly as big. Right.
Yeah. Those two are, over 100 million. That's, in full disclosure, I actually am working for Mike Mazzei's campaign. So okay.
I still love you.
Oh yeah. No. And listen, may the best man win. I really mean that.
I have a role. I needle Mike Mazzei.
Yeah. We do that. We pick.
I like him personally, but there's some tax issues.
Yes, that's how we met when he was
No, you were needling me that time.
Well, yeah. Right. Yeah, but I won. So anyway, Mike, in fact, he's president now, earlier. But anyway, but you're up against Goliath.
Yeah.
150, let's say $150 million. Man, that's rough. I mean, that is tough. Now, it doesn't mean it can't be done. Right. David beat Goliath. Yeah. But, so you're going to really have to have some groundwork. Do you have that foundation built? Do you have the workers, the people that are motivated and driven to
everywhere we go across the state and we communicate this message, there's immediate response, a positive response with the average guy wanting to get on board and say, how can I help? Because as soon as I tell people I'm not taking any PAC money, big corporate interest money, these kinds of things, it gives them such a great sigh of relief that finally somebody's in that they believe has the people's best interest in mind. And so just talking with people outside of the political circles, and that's really where we're going to focus, is not just on the GOP groups. We got to get outside there, talk to the masses. And when we talk to people, maybe they're registered voters, maybe not, maybe they're Republican, maybe they're not, but I just talk to people in general, and it's refreshing for them to hear someone who is not bought out. And I'm not saying any of these guys are bought out, but it's the appearance that they are. When they're receiving this money, they have this massive war chest. There's a question in the minds of the people, like who's really holding the puppet strings? who's really influencing them. And when I make it clear I'm not receiving any of that money, it's a true grassroots effort, then immediately people are saying, how can I help? Okay, I can believe in that. And so we just need to get that message out more. We need to be on the Fresh Black Coffee podcast, more in places like this that are reaching people. Of course, I know probably your audience is more politically minded, but we want to get out there and be on sports podcasts and go out there and reach people that are not, actively in our circles of influence. And I tell you, the response from them consistently has been positive. And so we're going to go out and we want to see a cultural shift. I said this in the meeting earlier, that the kind of government I believe we need is only possible if we see a cultural revolution.
True.
I believe that to the core, because that requires people to take personal responsibility and have self-government. Self-government means we can have maximized freedom. But when you have a culture that is unregulated, then the government wants to step in and regulate it. And necessarily so. I have Sam Adams, another quote from him. I love Sam Adams because he was an agitator. He was one that challenged the status quo of the day. And he said, it is in the interest of tyrants to reduce the people to ignorance and vice, for they cannot live in any country where virtue and knowledge prevail.
Wow.
So if we want to deal with centralized control and tyranny, we have to encourage virtue and knowledge in the culture. We have to go to the people. I said earlier, I have a family first campaign. I want to restore, protect, and move Oklahoma families forward. I believe that we have a breakdown at the family unit and health. I'm always been in health and fitness. I'm all about physical wellness. And to know if you're truly healthy, you have to draw your blood and look at your cells. It's not in the mirror. It's not on the scales. It's actually the cells. To know if you have cancer, if your hormones are regulated, it tells the story. And I believe that the family unit is the cell of the state. To know if a state is truly healthy, look at the nuclear family. Do we have fathers present? What's our domestic violence rate? It's high. What's our incarceration rate? It's high. And I think those also translate to what's our educational outcomes? It's low. Yeah. Well, I think when you have dysfunction in the family, you're going to have kids in seats in the classrooms who can't focus, who can't concentrate. They have too much going on at home. I think if we focus on the family, restored that, protected that, then we would see better educational outcomes just because you had more focused kids. Yeah. It impacts every aspect of society.
Since you're bringing up founding fathers, and thank you, Sam Adams. You just
love him.
Folksy, straightforward, not a lot of fluffy words.
Great beer.
Yeah. Thomas Jefferson, talked about the core functions of limited government: life, liberty, property, for all human life. Yeah. And you and I have been focused on at-risk populations, including the unborn. And a lot has happened there. What's left unfinished that the state can do? Because the state can't do everything. We don't want a tyranny. Yeah. So tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, speaking, I do prioritize state power, state sovereignty. There's big questions, and this could get into a whole nother series of podcasts, but concerning the 14th Amendment and what has that done to state sovereignty, as it seemed to have shifted things to more of a national framework rather than a federal framework with a priority on the individual states and their sovereignty. And so there's big questions there as far as what are the limits of state powers. For me, whenever I stood against abortion, it was twofold. I ran as an abolitionist, didn't even know what the word meant in relation to abortion until I ran for Congress. Yeah. I was introduced to some of the abolitionist groups who explained that to me. And I said, well, I guess I'm an abolitionist. I believe life begins at conception, or even you could say fertilization, which is where life begins. So if we believe life is sacred, we must protect it. Not 6 or 12 or however many weeks you want to justify it. But I believe life begins at conception. If we believe it's sacred, we must protect it as soon as it begins. No matter what form or to what maturity level it progresses, life is sacred at fertilization. That was my position. And I kind of assumed that was the pro-life position until I learned more. And it was more about, well, we can't really do much because of Roe versus Wade. And it was a deference to the federal courts, who I may have to say offer an opinion. They do not make law. So my fight for abolition was twofold: for life, number one; number two, for the authority and the power of the state. For us to say that if they say you can, and you must, not only can, but you must allow the taking of life, of human life, we as a state, where are we going to draw the line? At some point, if it is clear federal overreach and violates our conscience as a state, we have to say, go pound sand, federal government. What would happen? I throw the scenario out there. What would happen if Kamala Harris won? Think about where we would be in contrast to where we are now. Throw out some radical idea that would be impossible today, but may have been possible with somebody like Kamala Harris like we're trying to clean up our school libraries and remove sexually explicit material from our school libraries.
In the hands of children.
In the hands of children. And so what is the response from a lot of the left? They say, well, it's in the Bible. Let's get the Bible out. So I throw out this scenario. What if you take that to its end and you have somebody like Kamala Harris and they say, you know what, you're right. The Bible is a hate speech book. It's going to divide, not unite. We're going to remove the Bibles. And let's take that to the next level. You know what? We need to remove the Bible. So let's say Bibles are illegal in the United States. Take it to the most extreme, right? So what do we say as a state? Do we say, well, guys, gather up your Bibles? I mean, Supreme Court said, law said, we're going to burn our Bible. No, at some point you draw a line and you say, no, in Oklahoma, we're not going to do that. We're going to preserve that right and that freedom. And I had that view with abortion as well.
Okay.
And I want to say that I took a strong stand for state rights and states' powers and also for life as an abolitionist, which meant I voted against some pro-life bills, that I wasn't going to just check the box because it had the label pro-life. I was saying, does this actually value and protect human life? And if it didn't, I would vote against it, which looks bad on a mailer. You know, it shows that you voted with the Democrats. And then they want to say that I'm not pro-life. Actually, I'm super pro-life. You just need to get to the heart of what that vote was about. But we have a largely ignorant population base that want to just vote on what they see in a mailer. So that message won. And that was a big part of my reelection, my loss in my reelection, is they want to say I was not a pro-life candidate. Regardless, it's about principle. And I'm not going to make a vote or a decision based on how it's going to appear. I'm going to base it based on what is righteous. And I believe that was righteous, that vote. And I would do it again today, even if it meant I wasn't reelected.
Okay.
So, but to answer your question even further, I believe that we have to go to that end and say, what do we say about life? When does it begin? And we have to protect it when it starts.
And that is a core function of government, to protect life, liberty, property.
100%.
As Jefferson
100%.
said.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The last thing, I know we're wrapping up and you got to hit the road. Tax policy. We've seen a lot going on here recently. Some candidates want to shift more to adding as a tax base services, like your doctor bill, your plumber bill. If you have to hire an attorney, you're going to have to pay sales tax on that. Where are you on that, if we can simplify?
Well, I believe that just at its core, taxation is theft. You start with that, and it kind of makes things clear.
Okay.
It's the forceful taking of the fruits of your labor. No one is voluntarily paying taxes right now. I think there is a model where we could do that with the fair tax model.
Which is consumption
tax. It's a consumption tax.
Mm-hmm.
I like that as an ideal model. I don't think it's perfect, but it is voluntary, where you do away with the income, corporate, and property taxes, move everything to the register. So that increases the tax at the register, but that's the only tax you pay. Mm-hmm. And it's voluntary because you get to decide if you want to buy things. It wouldn't apply to groceries or essential items, mm-hmm. but the rich would pay more taxes because they buy more things. The poor would pay less taxes because they buy fewer things. And I think it's a fair way. So I would like to do that in an ideal world. If I had a magic wand, I'd go there. But with that in mind, my view of taxes, I'm opposed to these unnecessary taxes. They're only justified as necessary because we continue to grow government. And now we have to figure out a way to fund that growing government. If we'd stop growing government, we wouldn't have to have these extra taxes to pay for it. Get down to its essential function of protecting life, liberty, and property. And I think we can do away with most taxes here in the state. I was glad to see the state portion of the grocery tax eliminated, mm-hmm. but I really want to focus on property taxes. I would like to see property tax eliminated in the state of Oklahoma.
Right. And then corporate welfare, I've heard you speak about that. You don't want to hand millions of dollars in tax credits to electric car companies or battery companies like Governor Stitt has been doing.
100%. Tax credits in general are problematic if you're wanting to reduce the size of government, but especially to corporations. And I would like to prioritize local Oklahoma small businesses, help them out. In this effort to bring in these major corporations, the small businesses are out there saying, what about us?
Yeah.
Do we matter?
Yeah.
And I would like to make sure we help them get the work they needed. I love VOTech and career tech schools to help get these essential skills where they could go immediately to work with some of these local businesses. There's a lot we can do to support these local businesses rather than the corporate welfare like you're talking about.
Good. How do people get a hold of you?
Right now, jakeforthestate@gmail.com. That's the best way, jakeforthestate@gmail.com. I will be, once I file June 30th, I'll launch our official campaign website. It'll be jakemerrickforgovernor.com, and I'll have an email associated with that. But right now, until we file, you can get me at jakeforthestate@gmail.com.
Okay. I think you're on Twitter or X stuff.
I am on X, under my name, Jake Merrick, and Facebook, of course. I'm tapping my toe into TikTok, and we'll see. We'll try to use all social media platforms.
And they can pick up your radio show for the rest of this month.
I got one more week on 96.9 FM. After I file, we don't want to put the station at risk with a pursuit of equal time on the radio. So I will be stepping away from the radio station, and then I'll be going full time on the Jake for the State podcast.
Yeah, I'm expecting a podcast. You can't stop.
Yeah, I know. I love it. Love it too much.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to have candidate for State Corporation Commissioner Justin Hornbeck, and we're going to send Jake to the road. Get back to your family.
Thank you for your time, guys.
All right. Thank you.
For those of you at home, we're taking a break. We are live once again. Let me get my headphones on.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, everybody, we are back, and I'm not even going to do any music. I'll let you do that, Doctor.
Okay.
And fix it up. But anyway, we're now going to welcome into our studio, our humble studio, Jason Hornbeck, who is running for Corporation Commissioner.
Thank you very much.
Yes, welcome. So welcome to. We saw each other. When was it? A week ago?
I want to say it was a week ago.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep track when you're traveling the state and you've been to so many different meetings.
I can imagine. But I remember saying and thinking that this is an office that most of us know probably the least about. And what's really important is that we don't know how important of an office this really is, Corporation Commissioner. If you pay for heating bills, fuel, things like that, there's many things in the state that you guys have to oversee. I'm prophesying, you guys, that the Corporation Commission has to oversee. And it is a very neglected office as far as people knowing what they do. And so welcome.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to come here and speak with you guys, and you guys do wonderful here on this podcast, and appreciate the opportunity to speak to your listeners. But yeah, the Corporation Commission, I want to say 60% of the industry in Oklahoma is regulated at the commission. It's a constitutional body, a setup of 3 commissioners that serve staggered 6-year terms. So every 2 years we do vote on a seat. Todd Hyatt's seat is up, and he's served his 12 years, so he won't be running for re-election.
Oh, is that right?
So it will be an open seat. But yeah, a lot of people aren't aware of what goes on there, but our daily lives are affected by the choices made.
Yeah, help us out here. Let's go to 6th grade civics class. The Corporation Commission is set up. My understanding is when the government gives a monopoly, a exclusive territory, let's say to electric company, what's to stop them from charging whatever they want? And it's the Corporation.
It's the Corporation Commission. They are there to ensure that the rates stay reasonable. We do have one of the cheapest electricity rates in our area.
Wow.
The reason why
is that, are you speaking Broken Arrow or are you speaking Tulsa?
I'm talking about Oklahoma.
Oh, Oklahoma. Okay.
Compared to Texas.
Especially if you're in the Grand River Dam Authority's exclusive, because they don't pay taxes.
Right. But what we see on our bills is not only the usage, but you have the securitization fee from the 21 winter storm that we're paying back. And I believe I added it all up, almost $2.5 billion. The ratepayers are paying back. And
who allowed that?
We haven't got any answers from
the Corporation Commission.
Unfortunately, that's through the Attorney General, and the Attorney General at the time, I believe that was under O'Connor. It was right before he stepped out of that role and Drummond went in. But I've reached out to the AG, and I was told that, well, we don't contact the public. We don't talk to people about ongoing cases, and you'll just have to wait for a press release, which is funny because now the Attorney General is giving out his cell phone to people to give them a call. And I believe we need the answers. We've been asking for 4 years, why was this an issue? I understand that we did very well compared to Texas. We didn't run out of natural gas to the point where we didn't have electricity.
Without getting too deep in the woods, why is it the Attorney General had the final say, not the Corporation Commission?
Well, the Attorney General is the voice of the people. He's going to be the one, or she would be the one, to investigate any charges that were fraudulently exorbitant charges for the natural gas, which was what happened in the winter storm. The price of natural gas just skyrocketed.
Are you implying then that the Corporation Commission decided not to investigate wrongdoing by the Corporation Commission?
I'm saying that they took the amount that was told to them and they applied it as was told by the legislature to them to apply it through the securitization charges.
But here's what's interesting to me, and I don't know how everybody else is, but my gas bills, I haven't had an issue with those. It's the electric PSO is the one that I can't believe. It used to be my PSO bill was like $20 a month in the winter when I'm using gas for heat and I'm not blowing my AC. In the summer it was $200 a month maybe or so, but in the winter it was down like in the 20s because everything else I have a gas heated home, and yet my electric bill now is even in the winter, it was like $70-$80 a month.
Oh, that's low. Mine was higher than that.
Yeah. So, but you may have electric heating.
No, I'm natural gas.
Oh, you're natural. Yeah. So, whereas even in the winter when I'm using gas for everything, a gas furnace and all, I still, it's not that high.
Right.
As it is in the summer with the electric. So that's why I'm just saying, I'm just kind of shocked that you feel that PSO or whichever electric company it may be, rates have not been that bad.
Well, when I'm speaking about the rates, I'm talking about the actual rate for electricity, and you can check that out at the government websites. And it does show that our rate in Oklahoma is about 30 cents less than Texas. And that's residential, commercial, and industrial across the board. And they're different scales, but generally you're looking about 30 cents cheaper than Texas. But, and I can't speak to you specifically on your bills,
right.
But, what you also have to look at is the securitization charge, the franchise fees, the additional taxes that
the tax,
I want to call it a tax.
The tax
that you have on the itemized statement.
Okay. But when Grand River Dam Authority was set up, okay, they created Grand Lake, right? And Lake Hudson. And they had that as this afterthought. Hey, when we put this dam in, let's put in a hydroelectric power plant and try to recoup some of this expense to state, right? Well, Grand River Dam Authority has rates so low that the state is not making market rates on this. And here I live in the PSO territory. Others live in OG&E territory. And we're jealous of the folks over in Pryor and Shoto and all this that are paying way less.
And they're using a lot more electricity with Google.
Google specifically worldwide selected that industrial park because it had the lowest electricity prices in the world.
Right.
Wow.
And what the state could cut income taxes, cut all kinds of other things if they would just equalize things so everybody's paying the same.
And that's kind of the idea when I'm talking about the Corporation Commission, because you speak to a lot of people that say, oh, regulations, we don't need any regulations. And you try to explain that we understand there's make sense regulation you have to have. Now there's over regulation and we can address that and we need to, but the legislative body needs to discuss that and pass the bills that we need to deregulate some of the overregulated parts. But yeah, I mean, there's a multiple different ways that we can attack that. And having that discussion is number one, trying to figure out what works best for everybody in Oklahoma and the different areas, because we understand that each part of Oklahoma is going to have a different view.
Yeah, because the costs of putting in these projects were incurred by the whole state. Some of it's federal money, Army Corps of Engineers too, but to selectively benefit certain people in certain territories. Now, I've talked about this before and written out, and I tell you who's upset at what I'm having to say is the Cherokee tribe, because most of it's in Cherokee territory, a lot of Cherokee Indians, and they like their low rates. You leave us alone, mind your own business.
Well, that seems to be the case. No matter what issue you talk about, people, if it benefits them, they say we found a good balance. Let's cut it there. I get the good end of the deal. We don't need to worry about you guys.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's what happens in politics. Once a group has their issues addressed, they don't look at the other groups that are affected in the same way.
As much as you and I get disgusted with Google and YouTube and all the things they're doing to undermine our values, we're treating them better than the folks in Tulsa because they get the cheap rates. You and I don't. Yeah.
And I'd love to go in depth on that. And if we had another show or two, I'm sure we can get into that. Okay. What I do want to talk about, though, is a lot of these issues go back to some of my campaign points. And I tell people I'm all about the how and not the what, because every candidate that runs for Corporation Commission is going to tell you they don't like the lack of communication, that people aren't involved. They want to be a watchdog for the ratepayer. That's the what. The ratepayers feel like they no longer have a say. So the how is you open up communication, and I step up by giving everybody my cell phone. I say, look, during my campaign, reach out to me. If you have any questions at any time, call me. Now, if I'm sleeping, I'll call you back the next morning. Obviously, I know where the ringer's at. I'm going to turn that off. But it's about the how. How do we open up communication? And that goes going to the local level, talking to the county commissioners that are making a lot of decisions on a lot of projects that are coming to the area. That's talking to the representatives that are talking to the people and understand the problems of their constituents, especially when you get to the bordering counties. A lot of their issues are going to stem around the trucking industry and the permits. And so it really shows you that because the scope of the Corporation Commission is wide, that each county is going to have a different viewpoint and a different hot topic that's important to them. The other thing is transparency, and you really get a lack of transparency in some of the dealings with Corporation Commission because they don't want to get into specifics about specific companies. However, the whole point of the Corporation Commission is to be transparent and be open and honest with the people and be there. So when people call, they're getting in touch with who they need to talk to right away and having access to all the information. And if you're doing the job correctly, whether they like what you have to say or don't like what you have to say, you can stand behind it.
So what is your educational background? What was your major?
Well, I'm a pipeline welder by trade. We don't really
so
have to have an education, but I did go to school. I have a business degree, and I'm also a certified welding inspector. It's an online school out of Ohio.
Okay.
But I'm also certified welding inspector.
We're not education snobs in this this studio.
And then I've also gotten my specialist in safety and health, both in construction and general industry.
And so what is your current occupation?
I'm a pipeline welder.
A pipeline welder.
So I go project to project. It's going to be months at a time working on a project, working myself out of a job, and then going home and waiting for the next one. A lot of these are going to be the bigger new construction, but I've had to diversify my skill set to include working in power generation plants, working in steel mills, working in the places that we connect to on the pipeline, so that between times I'm able to stay busy. And anybody that's in the oil and gas industry understands the need.
So how did you get to the point where I think I want to be corporation commissioner?
Well, that's a very interesting story. At the young age of 20, getting involved in the pipeline, I realized quickly that these anti-energy groups were turning pipeline into a dirty word and attacking the permitting process at the local level. And for once, I understood that we had to fight for our jobs. So going to permitting meetings with these utility corporations and utility committees throughout the United States to say, look, these are good paying jobs. That's private industry coming in with private money that's going to bring taxes, jobs, and money being spent in these communities that desperately need it.
Okay. And you're not going to do this, but I will. Warren Buffett's one of the biggest fighters of it. Why? Because he owns Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad, or largely.
And I'd love to get into the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, which was out in the East Coast that would have transported natural gas to the coast, which LNG is a big thing. And at that time,
Keystone XL,
keeping the natural gas on the railroads would benefit Warren Buffett. Keystone XL, I mean, that's a good example.
He's had oil spills hauling that Canadian oil down here on his railroads.
Well, look at just the data. Pipelines are the safest, most efficient way of transporting.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to hear.
100%. And that's the frustrating part when you go into these communities and you hear these open meetings where you have so many voices from the small minority that want to shut down American energy so that we no longer can protect ourselves or have access to that cheap, reliable resource that we desperately need. And people we're starting to listen to them. Now I've sensed a kind of a pushback in the general sense that people are, as we see an exponential rise in energy demands, we're starting to realize we need to tap into our American energy and be able to transport it. So it does seem like the pushback isn't as heavy, but Keystone XL, I fought for that for 20 years almost. And it came down to the president signing an order, shutting that down, putting pipeliners on the unemployment line, and then Pete Buttigieg looking into a camera saying, you guys just need to go back to school, learn how to code, and you can rejoin society as long as you're valuable over there. And now we're running record number of pipelines to power AI data centers that are taking over coding jobs. And it's very frustrating.
Well, it takes me to another thing, nuclear.
Yes.
What is your position on nuclear?
Well, I've worked in nuclear plants. I understand, the process, and I'm very much for it. It's a very expensive option. Here we have a lot of natural gas. We do have nuclear power surrounding us. So you go to Kansas, you go to Missouri, you go to Texas, Arkansas. There are nuclear generating plants all around.
It's not necessarily the cheapest to go nuclear, is it?
No, it's a very expensive, and especially initially, you're talking about a large investment and then a heavily regulated, which understandably you have safety concerns.
We don't want Chernobyl here.
Right.
Absolutely.
But apparently the reason I ask, because I've invested in the stocks are going crazy, right? Nuclear is really taking off.
Globally, yeah.
What? Just domestically. I'm talking domestically.
Right. Yeah.
And so they have these new. Are you familiar with the modular reactors?
I am, and we're still moving towards that. It's a vision of the future, and I look forward to seeing.
So you would be open to us having a nuclear power plant?
I am open to an all of the above strategy, as long as everyone is fighting at the same level. See, in Oklahoma, what we've had is a surge of wind power, and it's not. Luckily, Oklahoma's gotten rid of the subsidies, but it's a tax subsidy generating business. It's not an energy generating business. And I believe our energy secretary has stated that these companies, if they check enough boxes, can get up to 70% of their initial capital investment back before they even start generating on wind. And that's why you've seen such a high rise. And this legislative session, we've seen a lot of good push for natural gas generation, which is great because we're all about natural gas.
Yeah.
I don't have anything against a company coming in and saying they want to compete, but they have to compete at a fair level.
Is there anything Corporation Commission can do to make it more feasible, maybe cut regulations for natural gas powered vehicles, CNG cars?
A lot of the power that the commission derives, it comes from the legislature.
Okay.
So the lawmakers that have to submit the bills and vote on the bills to give that to the commission or to give that to the local level, depending on where those need to be put in place. So it begins with the conversation between understanding the problem, getting the legislature involved to know how to draft the bill that will work, ensure that we have regulations that approve it, because we saw with the marijuana industry, which is outside of the corporation commission, but you see where you allow something to come in unregulated and it turns into a nightmare, and then we end up working backwards.
I don't think
instead
they
of doing
enforced it correctly, and they they allowed it to get corrupt by not stepping in. But that's me.
And we've taken 5 years to kind of backstep and correct that, and it's good. But we need to have those conversations first to ensure we're doing it right. From the beginning.
Lost a lot of good people in the business because they couldn't compete against the corrupt people.
Right.
Good dealers versus bad dealers.
Yeah. Refineries. I understand we've really developed in the last 10, 15 years, the out there at Stroud, right? Or Drumright. Is it
Cushing, Drumright?
Cushing. Thank you. That's what it was. And I've heard nationally, it said the last 40 years, it's almost been impossible to create a new refinery. And so the current refinery has just been expanding. I guess that's a lot of like EPA and other federal regulations just create a mess by design, probably. Is there anything the Corporation Commission can do to help us do more of our own refining here in Oklahoma?
Again, it's understanding the process and understanding where the state has the power to make those decisions. Obviously, you talk about the EPA, you're getting into the federal oversight, and I understand the process. I've not just studied the industry, I've physically built it. So I do understand a lot of the way that these go into place. But so without the power, without the legislature behind you, you're not moving forward. You need to have all the pieces together working for the same goal.
Yeah.
Now, moving from the actual nuts and bolts of the job of Corporation Commissioner, how's your campaign going? What can you tell our audience as far as your needs and where you are on that end?
Yeah, speak to that.
Well, right now I'm traveling the state, trying to get it to meet as many people as possible. I'm going to a lot of GOP meetings and a lot of commerce meetings, and just meeting who I can in different communities and understanding what's important to them. You can check out where I'm going, where I'm at, and I keep my Facebook updated. I've tried the other social medias. It takes too much time, and a lot of times it's the same people on all the different platforms. So focusing on one is really where I'm at. So go on Facebook, look up Justin Hornbeck for Corporation Commission 2026. You can go to my website at hornback.com, and that's HORNBACK. And just follow along. A like, a share is a great thing on social media, because it not only gets that word out to your neighbors and friends, but it lets people know, I've been wondering who does that, because a lot of us don't even know that the Corporation Commission has stickers on the side of the gas pumps, because
that's part of their job.
The gas pumps. Right.
Yeah.
So
when you see a bag over a handle there, meaning this is out of commission, it's likely because the corporation says, you know what, you were getting a full gallon that you paid for.
That's a good possibility.
Yeah.
Really? I just thought they were out of gas.
No. Well, when they say it's not working, it really it's not working accurately enough for the Corporation Commission to allow us to keep using it.
That's generally it. They want to make sure that it is accurate.
And now earthquakes. That was something 10 years ago. I'm looking here, Labor Day weekend of 2016, 5.8. And Pawnee, not far from Tulsa. And it shook us up pretty big.
What year?
In 2016.
Oh,
that wasn't the first one. Yeah. I mean, down in Shawnee, there was a 5.7. And I was furious. I wrote on it. In fact, my stuff went viral nationally because it was so big. And it was on a weekend, and Labor Day weekend at that. But I was furious. And I said, the Corporation Commission is not going to get by with just another email.
Right.
And by God, the next Thursday, I think it was, they had an open symposium at TU. And they spelled out and they took questions.
Right.
This was the problem, is they were like an ivory tower. And the legislature had banned, Jason Murphy was state rep up there in Guthrie. It had really been hit hard by him. And the legislature banned counties from putting moratoriums. We found out it wasn't fracking. It was the injecting salt water back underground, because that comes up with it. And ever since they put those moratoriums on, my God, you're not hearing about earthquakes anymore. It's very rare.
And there's two things I want to point out about that. A, people shouldn't have to go to the point of getting national attention before we're willing to have a conversation. And B, look what happens when we're able to come together, see a problem, find ways to address it. And at the Corporation Commission, I'm proud that they did pull back on the pressure of the injection.
Yeah.
And we are having positive results.
Yeah. But it took 5 years to get there.
Right.
5 years has sustained a lot of property damage all over the state.
And it shouldn't take that long to just have a conversation. If we are open and talking at the very beginning, we should be able to have almost immediate results.
Yeah.
It may not be the one that you think is best or I think is best, but when we all sit down and figure out what the problem is, we start addressing the issue right away instead of 5 years later.
They didn't ban fracking, as a lot of leftists wanted, right? And they didn't try to raise taxes on the oil. They just said, here's the deal. Don't be pumping so much. They took control over the pumping. Hardly had any earthquakes in the last 10 years.
And I'm also very proud, because a lot of times when you get in situations where there's a problem, fear takes over. And when people get fearful, they want to just stop. They don't want to address the issue. They don't want to move forward. They just want to stop. And unfortunately, that doesn't move us forward in Oklahoma. So the best thing to do is to look at the problem, understand the issues, understand how to address it, and move forward. And the natural gas industry has shown their ability to do this time and time again when it comes to the carbon emissions, hidden green energy checkpoints that they've imposed on us, and still being able to be energy dominant here in America. That's how innovation works, is not stopping, but continuing forward, but addressing the issues so that we can.
Yeah. Does your Corporation Commission have any involvement on pollution regulation, any of that? I think it's a different agency.
A lot of that's going to be derived, right, with DQ or
environmental quality.
Right. But ensuring that these businesses are addressing environmental issues is part of the corporation.
Now, saltwater disposal, that's a pollution issue, but it's corporation controls that.
Correct. So there's a little overlap, and it's very hard to get into the intricacies of how each field works.
Jason, so if people want to support your candidacy, how do they do that? You can speak into the.
Well, if you'd like to donate, you can go to hornbeck.com. We do have a donate button, but truly, I prioritize word of mouth and people helping out how they can over monetary value, because, you telling 10 friends about the Corporation Commission, about myself or any other candidate that may throw their hat into the ring, gives people more information to make that correct vote and get out there and ensure that the right person is elected. And that goes so much farther than $5, $10, $25 does, because nowadays a mailer might cost you $1 a mailer. And you're talking about 1.3 registered Republicans in Oklahoma, 1.3 million. So at $1 a piece, I'm kind of in the same boat that Jake was talking about. You try to ensure that the money isn't hanging over your head. And so I've always gone at it with a very personal funded, and keeping that low does not allow for mailers. It's getting into. I'm
looking at your name here. Eddie and I both have German blood, right? It's Hornbeck, not Hornbeck.
That's correct.
Not the Beck as in Becker. Hornbeck.
Or Bach.
Yes.
A lot of people try to make it more complicated than it is. It's just.
But when you're going to hornbeck.com,
correct.
It's HORNBACK.com.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And so it'll take you. My actual web domain is hornbeck2026.com, but it all goes to the same website.
Yeah. Now, what is your? Have any other people filed for the office?
I've heard that at least one House representative will be jumping in. I haven't looked. Last time I looked, there hadn't been any other committee set up with the Ethics Commission. But I believe that there is one, and the Constitution newspaper said best. There's a lot of people that are terming out in the House and Senate that they expect quite a few to throw their name in the ring for multiple offices.
The biggest way to clear the road, I think, talking to John Eccles, who's running for Attorney General, is he's trying to front load as much of his campaign support in the next filing. Because when they see your campaign war chest, maybe I'll just wait a year, for the next election or some other office. So if you really like, Mr. Hornbeck, donating this month might make bigger impact than donating next month, because June 30th is a deadline for filing finances.
And it might just sway. Though I encourage anybody to jump in. I think running a campaign is just like a job application.
Yeah,
the more applicants you have, the better for the people.
But you're human. Encouragement helps.
Yes,
and a donation is great encouragement.
And if you can't donate, please reach out to me. Can I give my cell phone?
Absolutely.
It's 918-219-3185. You can give me a call anytime. Text probably works the best because I'm driving a lot, getting to all these different meetings throughout the state.
And I'm sure you're going to be organizing, like in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, ground teams to help get you at events represented, because you can't be everywhere at once, but you'll need that, right?
Yeah. And it's still a lot of the planning stage at this point. It's very early in the process, but all the other state candidates jumped in and got started. So I wanted to be able to be at the meetings with them and give attention to this very important office.
Well, clearly you've given this a lot of thought. This is not an impulse thing. You've started here over year and a half now, almost 2 years you've been working on this, right?
And I ran last time. So I've been focused on this for over 3 years. It's been something that my job has kind of led to. I've been in the industry. I work in the industry. I've seen the regulations from the side of the people, and I understand the process. I want to be able to take that education and experience and serve the people.
So you've been on the ground shipping oil, piping oil, doing all that. What's the hardest welding there is to do as a welder?
I'm actually going to say pipeline is pretty easy in the sense that you're not surrounded by all the other stuff. It's wide open. Now the welding itself is verified. You have an inspection, you have non-destructive testing, 100%. But you get into some of these plants and energy generation places, and you are stuck in the corner welding with a mirror. You can't get your head there, so you are freehanding or looking through a gap.
So it's the tight spaces that make it.
Spaces are definitely.
So, but you do almost all arc welding, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Acetylene or aluminum, and there's all kinds of welding.
We do a lot of TIG, especially in the nuclear, because of how clean it is. You don't have the flux and you don't have the cleanup. But downhill stick on pipeline is generally you're getting a lot of low hydrogen procedure, which is stick and also flux core or dual.
He's
shield.
real, Eddie. You can't fake this stuff.
It's another whole language.
I've done a lot of welding, and I know a poser when I see this guy ain't a poser. He's truly a welder.
Yeah, this is crazy. I say, wait a minute, let me get my glossary out here.
As a welding inspector, I get into that where I throw those terms out just thinking everyone's following along with me, and I apologize.
No, I'm going to need a Berlitz book to translate it,
Yeah. Aluminum welding still freaks me out. I don't know how to do.
It's one I haven't done a lot of, but I have looked.
Yeah, the tanker trucks. I think a lot of that's aluminum.
Right.
Well, Jason, seriously, this has been great.
Justin.
Justin.
It's all right.
Did I call you Jason before?
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I apologize.
It happens.
You should just
starts with a J.
Justin. I'm sorry. I don't know where I got
Justin Hornbeck.
Justin Hornbeck. Yes, like the hornbacked owl. No, I'm just. Bad Eddie. No, seriously, I really appreciate it because I've learned a whole lot, and it's just good to know somebody, that's there and knows the business from the ground up. To me, a lot of times, one of the problems we have is you get these representatives that leave the House or the Senate that really, they have no background in the things that they're going to be overseeing. Mm-hmm. And from what we heard earlier today, they're beholden to a lot of lobbyists and so forth. Mm-hmm. And I would much rather see one of us, the common man, taking that knows it from the ground up and takes it from there. So I'm going to be praying for you, and I'm going to be definitely in your corner. So
we want you back. 12 months from now, we'll be in the thick of the primary. So
we'll have to jump in depth on some of these topics that we covered and
answer, the stuff that flies.
But no, you hit the nail on the head, and so did Jake before. There's so much money involved in it, and what it takes is just somebody to step up. We're not going to get campaign reform like we think it should be. So you just have to do what you believe and stand on your own morals and your own decisions.
Well, there's the producers and, the corporations that provide the energy and things like that. And the Corporation Commission is there to protect the consumers. But if all the campaign money is coming from the other side and they want us to pick who's going to protect us from them, see, this is why it takes intelligence and not just listening to a bunch of jingles on TV.
Well, not only do you fear the strings that are attached to every dollar that's donated to these campaigns through PAC money, but you see it at the Capitol a lot. If you don't go along with certain bills, our lawmakers will be told, hey, you need to vote this way or else you're not only not getting the money, but we're going to find somebody to run against you that will have the money.
We've seen that.
So the money becomes such a big deal. And I feel like just staying out of it is the best way because there's no ifs, ands, or buts.
Jim Inhofe said, no money, no message. No message, no victory. That's the way he put it.
and I have seen that in the past with a very limited campaign. It's hard to get the message out. So I appreciate this, and that's why social media has become such a wonderful asset.
All right. As you go to break.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in.
We'll go to break. Thank you.
steady pulse of the night. My soul goes warm within. I'm sad and still by the side. I see people hang their heads, hearts dangled by a thread, and I stop to pray for lonely lives slipping away. So many faces, so many lives, so many lives. Trying to survive, so many wonders, how will it end? The answer's waiting, just let him in. I walk alone inside.
All right, Dave, we are back.
All right.
That was good. That was really.
We're stacking them deep today.
Yeah, I learned a lot there. Seriously, that last interview in particular was very, very good because just learning the breadth and depth and we moved. What I really like is to see somebody that has been in it. Been in the ditch, with it, and in the tight spaces, and probably has burns all over his hands from welding. Welding is not for the weak of heart because, sparks flying and you burn and it can be dangerous if you don't. There's a reason you have to go to welding school. Yeah. You don't just start today, and plus the technology in welding has increased as well. But I was impressed, not just by the fact, but he's done all kinds of, he's worked on, gas pipelines. He's worked on probably towers. And especially I'm impressed that he's even worked on nuclear plants. Yeah. Things like that. So this guy knows, and he knows what the commission does, regulation and stuff like that. So you've got a whole different cat, as they want to say here, that you don't have a politician that's looking for another job.
And he's not some lackey for some big oil company or some other power company. Because you don't want them picking who their watchdog's going to be to protect us from them.
Right. So Justin Hornbeck, I don't know how I got to, it was Jake and Justin. And so I think just alliterated it, transliterated.
A lot going on today, Eddie.
Yeah. And I'm usually not up that early on weekends. I've been going to these meetings for the last couple of weeks. And so I've got to get up early on Saturday even, that instead of my normal time of rest. Hey, few things have happened. Let's clear our palates a little bit with some sports news. Yeah. And my sons, Florida Panthers, have won the Stanley Cup for the second time in a row. So they are busy celebrating in South Florida.
You beat them Canadians.
Beat them Canucks again. Yeah. What's so bad? Just in full disclosure, don't tell my son or anybody affiliated with the Panthers. I'm a Winnipeg Jets fan.
Really?
Yeah. Isn't that weird? I saw a game of theirs and I was just drawn. I think what did it is I've seen how nasty some of these other teams are, And when I watched Winnipeg, they played a clean game. They ended up losing, I believe. Did they get Dallas beat them? The Stars.
I remember that.
I can't remember, but they were in the playoffs initially, but they were eliminated.
I like Winnipeg. Minnesota, Manitoba are so close.
Right. They're right above you guys. They're the state.
I used to go canoeing up Manitoba every summer back in high school. Good people. Good people. My cousin just married a gal from Manitoba. Her dad pastored a church there in Winnipeg, and just great folk.
Yeah, seems like it. But like I said, you can usually tell by the caliber of the team. Edmonton, they just got nasty. I mean, it was like, and this is the second year. It's interesting. Not only were the Panthers the finalists again, but Edmonton were also the finalists last year. So it was a repeat.
Even the semis against Carolina. What a rivalry. Lauderdale and Carolina.
Yeah.
And that came down to, I mean, that was a tough one.
Yeah, that was tough. But it was amazing how calm they were this year. They just were all business, and half of their team was injured and gone for the latter part of the regular season. In fact,
Panthers.
The Panthers. Yeah. In fact, they were the last playoff team. They were the bottom seed of the playoffs.
This year?
Yeah, this year. They were.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. But it's because all of their stars were out.
So you might call them, to use a football analogy, they were a wild card team that won it all.
I'm not sure. I don't think they were the wild card. They do have a wild card, but they were the last as far as, you have 4, and I think it ends up being 6. So you top 5 and then a wild card.
Oh, okay.
And so I think they were number 5.
Okay.
And so but I always knew, I could see they were building, and they were waiting, for their guys to get healthy. And then the further they went in the playoffs, a new one came.
Yeah.
And then they had gotten from Boston, Brad Marchand, Canadian.
Yeah.
And but he played for Boston, and he came down, and it took him, he came probably mid-season towards the first part of the second half. And you could see he was just not getting it. But playoff time, boom, here comes this guy. They call him the Rat because he kind of looks like a rat.
Yeah.
And Rat is one of the mascots for them. For some reason, they've got this thing where a rat, after every game, they throw plastic. The fans they buy plastic rats, about 6-inch rats. And they throw them on the ice at the end of the game.
Yeah, this is something that makes hockey so unique as a sport. Imagine in football, if you imagine them using as a penalty being one man short for a certain number of minutes on the clock.
Yeah.
Can you imagine having to play
basketball
10 minutes? Yeah.
Basketball, 4 against 5.
Right. That's how impacting it is. And this is something that's unique to hockey. I guess soccer has a version of it.
Yeah, they got the penalty, but it's 10 v 11 instead of 4.
Well, and don't they also, if they eject a player in soccer, you play one man down, right?
Yeah, it's like the penalty, only the difference is in soccer, it's the rest of the game.
The rest of the game, yeah.
Instead of, the 3-minute or the
But I remember my beloved North Stars, when they were the North Stars, you would literally see they got 2 penalty boxes. And sometimes you'd see those guys climbing over the divider and going at each other in the penalty box.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
They used to let them hang on to the stick. And then I think they changed it, or at least this was back in the 70s, to where somebody hangs on to their stick and doesn't give it back to them until the time it's elapsed.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because that stick's a weapon.
Yeah. And I think we talked about how in England, the murder case where the player was so mad, he went by and lifted his skate and slit the guy's throat on the ice. I saw the video. It was not pretty. Oh. He's running and crying. Blood is just running, and he finally collapses before he can get off the ice. But that guy's in prison. You talk about a bad sport. Yeah. But also, the other new thing, there is a new hero selling all of the merchandise in the WNBA.
Tell me.
Yeah. It's on the Indiana Fire. Is that the Fire? Fever. I'm sorry. Fever. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what's happened is there's a young lady I wish
it's not Caitlin Clark.
No, it's not Caitlin Clark. Someone has replaced Caitlin Clark, selling jerseys everywhere now. I don't even have my phone in here.
Well, Indiana, those who remember the great basketball movie Hoosiers, Indiana has such a rich basketball history as a state. It's the people's sport. And to see them having now a professional women's and professional men's team playing so well, because right now, I mean, the Pacers, this is the last game against our Oklahoma Thunder.
Yeah. And no, that's what I was going to get to that as well. But well, they don't have her name on here. That is weird. She's they had the other starting lineup. Why do they not have her? Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. I apologize. But anyway, what happened all of last year and the beginning of this year, they have had just a brutal attack against Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, especially Chicago, right?
Well, that's because of April. What's her name? The April Reese from LSU, because they were college rivals, and then they went into and April has been kind of not nice. Let's just put it that way. But anyway, so they April in Chicago are really out of it. I mean, they're losing.
Are you talking about Hannah Stolke?
No.
Okay. That was college.
Yeah, here, hold on. If you'll bear with us, please, I will get to
this. You're doing that. I'm just going to get people caught up.
Sophie Cunningham.
Sophie, thank you.
So a tall, thin, beautiful young lady. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that she has a background in judo and karate as a child. And she even was a kicker in football in high school. But anyway, she's tall, thin, really beautiful young lady. Oh, yeah. But anyway, she so in the last game, I'm trying to think of I think it was Atlanta they were playing, and Atlanta was just being just really nasty and dirty. Well, Sophie ends up taking this one girl out, and she just threw her basically down on the court off, and these other girls were coming at her, and she was just fighting. So all of a sudden, she is now the hero because she has stepped up to protect Caitlin Clark, but she's just basically served notice. We're not taking this stuff anymore.
Yeah, I guess she used to play for Phoenix.
Right. She was with Phoenix last year. Right. Yeah. She's in fact, they picked up 4 new players this year, and she was one of them, and they're doing really well. But anyway, they've decided it's going to be a different season this year. And but anyway, YouTube videos everywhere of her now, and her jersey sales have just skyrocketed. Yeah. And so it's kind of interesting to see. But here's the other side of this. The women's professional basketball now is becoming one of the top sports to watch, because all of a sudden people are waking up. It's kind of funny. It's like people love the WWE, or they like Ultimate Fighting, and hockey. For some reason, people like to see people fight.
Yeah.
They just the sport isn't good enough anymore.
No, we used to say, I went to the fights last night, a hockey game broke out.
Right. And so now all of a sudden people are saying, wait a minute, man, there's a lot of excitement. And of course, when these girls are fighting and everything, the crowd is just roaring. They're just going, mm-hmm. It's kind of funny. It's kind of a negative, what would you call it? Negative compliment, not compliment, but just a negative view of the game. But it's having the reverse effect. So mm-hmm. It's just kind of interesting. But anyway, get back down to it. If you want a chance to see it, just go to YouTube, look up Sophie Cunningham, and you'll see these videos.
Yeah, she ain't taking crap from anybody.
No. She's served it's enough. And Caitlin Clark is like Dr. J used to be. I don't know if people in the NBA that watched the NBA back in the 70s.
Yeah, your famous team.
Right. They would, people would get in fights, and you show your camera, and Dr. J is way off over in the corner by himself. I'm not getting into this. He just did not want to get into the fisticuffs and the fighting and all. But it was kind of interesting. He's watching the video now.
Well, they've been opponents been poking these girls' eyes.
Yeah, they've been trying to poke, and that's the bad thing. And that's when finally these people saying no more. And the refs aren't even calling a lot of this. You know, this is what made the coach. Their coach is very, very upset. You know about this. That they need to start. They're going. I'm the one who said 2 weeks ago that I believe Caitlin Clark honestly should do everyone a favor except the WNBA and go to Europe and play in Europe where people would respect her and appreciate the gift she is to basketball. Yeah. Because if these women are going to, because the girl who did this to her initially,
JC Sheldon was one that I'm seeing, and Marina Mabry. Yeah, been doing the eye poking.
Right. Well, no, yeah. It's not the I think it's not the one that poked her in the eye. I think it's the one that came and just knocked her down, came by and just knocked her down, then went over to the sidelines and was kind of just reveling in it. And look what I did. Look what I did. Of course, they ended up losing by 20 points in the end. They got the Fever won. They just tore it up after that.
But this gal's going up for a layup, and Sophie puts her in a headlock and slams her down
to the ground.
Yeah. And they called that foul. They didn't miss that one, but they missed the eye poke.
Yeah. Well, not only the eye poke, but then the black girl came, the player, and hit and pushed Caitlin Clark down to the ground. And that's when, that it's just silly. It is. I think we've discussed this before. The big thing behind a lot of this is that there's a lesbian mafia in the WNBA. And this lesbian black coalition does not like Caitlin Clark because she's none of the above. Yeah. And none of these girls that they brought into Indiana, they all turn to be straight, they're good looking, and they're great basketball players. And so that's
good marketing. I'm sorry, but it is.
Well, no, but
call it sexist.
Yeah, but not only that, but it would be sexist if they weren't good.
Yeah.
But they're good.
Yeah.
And so but now, and see what's sad is the black players on her own team won't take up for Caitlin Clark.
But Sophie did.
Yeah. And so it's created this thing. But anyway, there was a girl, and let me just say this. This has been going on for a long time, this lesbian mafia in particular. There was I can't think of her name. She went to Cassia Hall in the 90s, a young lady. And she was a graduate there, great basketball player. And then she ended up going to Duke or North Carolina. I think it was Duke. She got recruited by Duke, played there, played great. And I talked to her mother. And her mother told me that the reason she went overseas, she never played in America. And she didn't play in America because of the lesbian mafia in basketball. They had pretty much taken over the WNBA. Wow. And so this young lady ended up playing in Europe, and her whole career now, and this is 20 years ago almost, and she just decided to stay in Europe where you didn't have that. You didn't have to deal with that. And she was able, and they're actually paying more money in Europe. I think they offered Caitlin Clark something like $100 million to play overseas.
I've got a breaking update here.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
This is just 3 hours ago. This Marina Mabry, who is one of them doing the eye poking, right. Well, her team is playing Dallas. Paige Buchers,
right,
good friend of Caitlin Clark. Mabry's ankle's now broken.
Ooh.
At the hands of Paige Bucher.
Oh, Paige Bucher.
Well, the Sun lost to the Wings. I guess Dallas Wings.
Yeah, Dallas Wings.
So this was just 3 hours ago that this got posted. I guess the game would have been last night. Maybe it's old. I don't know. But evidently this war is growing.
Yeah.
Okay. There's Team Caitlin and her gal pals, and then there's the Mabry in that bunch. And this could drive a ticket sales.
Yeah. Well, in Dallas, you are
going to the fights and the girls' basketball games.
Dallas, yeah, the EWBA. But anyway, yeah, it's interesting. It's getting crazy.
Now I'm intrigued.
Yeah, you'll be watching. I think the Indiana Fever are playing tomorrow again. So if you want to, it'll be on TV. You can watch tomorrow. On the other basketball note, I want to discuss our very own Thunder. Mm-hmm. I don't know what's wrong with these guys.
They got blown out, didn't they?
They did get blown out. But they were never in this. Well, I'm sorry. In the first 5 minutes, I think they were up by 10 points. That was the match.
I think they got close at a point too, and all of a sudden the momentum changed, and they just.
I don't know. In the second half, they just never. I know in the second half they never did because Indiana just kept this lead and kept pounding. And it's funny because everybody was kind of looking at this kid or guy. He was from. What is his name? I can't think of his name. Anyway, he played for Iowa State in college, and he now plays for Indianapolis for Indiana.
Big 12.
Yeah, and he's he was injured in the last home game. Right at the end, he was injured and wasn't playing well, but he came back and was playing really well. So. I don't know. Did the Fever do this so they could win it at home? I don't know, but that's not how to do it.
Yeah.
If it's an early game, like the fourth game, fifth game, or even sixth game, and you're at home. I'm sorry. I'd say in the first four games, if you're at home and you can win it, wait till you get home to win, then do it. But you don't wait till the seventh game.
No, there was a lot more motivation for Indiana. When your back's against the wall, we have to win this to stay alive and then win the next one. It's a difference between the cheetah who's running after the gazelle for his next meal and the gazelle who's running for his life.
But the cheetah tends to win. Anyway,
yeah.
So the gazelle needs to win the game early.
Yeah, but now if you got two gazelles on the run, all you got to do is outrun the other gazelle. But that's just it's
like the joke about the two guys running from the bear.
Yeah,
and the guy says, man, we got to beat this bear. And the guy says, no, actually, I just have to beat you. Yeah. Because if I beat you, the bear will get you. So
tomorrow night's game 7.
Yeah.
And it's in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
And, I'm hearing all this on local TV and some radios is the police force are going to, bulk up and that. They assume that we're like Detroit or Philly, that if we win, it's going to be more violent than if we lose.
That's ridiculous.
That doesn't happen in Oklahoma.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, I don't know who's. Yeah, no, they're not going to be riots in Oklahoma. They're not going to tear up that downtown Oklahoma.
Remember 2 years ago, this last week, we had a massive windstorm that literally knocked the city flat on its butt. No power, nothing. Did you see any looting? No. At 3 a.m, I'm out driving these dark streets, and a lot of them, Riverside was shut down, all the trees down covering the road. I'm seeing all this. Couldn't reach out to anybody. All the phones are down. Power's down. Everybody just minding their own business.
Yeah, generally, this may be a little generalizing, but it seems to be totally accurate that if you look at all the cities with the highest crime and those type of public insurrection incidences, it's usually if there's a Democrat mayor.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the mayor in Oklahoma City right now, I can't remember if he's a Republican or
no, Democrat. David Holt, he's a rhino.
Well, he's a Republican, though. Yeah. But a rhino, yeah. So, in fact, we've had a few of those there in a while in the past. But at least he's still maintains order in the city. You know, that's the important thing. But if you look at New York, Philadelphia, Chicago, LA, all of Detroit, it's almost always a Democrat running, and not just the mayor, but the city council, the administration is usually a Democrat.
Imagine, let's take some famous riots like South Central LA. Rodney King gets the snot beat out of him. The police walk, right? No conviction. The urban folk felt cheated, and they settled the score with looting, rioting, right? So people feel cheated. They're mad. They lost. I can see that moving over to sports. I used to see that back in the 70s and 80s, some of that, where they take it out on the merchants in the downtown. But when you win, there's a different thing going on. It's that sense of invincibility. I'm in charge. And it shows the character.
Yeah. And drugs and alcohol have a lot to do with it, too.
Good point.
That there's a lot of public intoxication, people getting crazy, and then they don't know. Because if you ever look at these celebrations, the people breaking light posts and jumping on cars and drinking after a game, it's usually white people. It's not a thing of black people. Now, black people will riot, but the ones you see out publicly, you know, jumping on police cars and doing all this kind of crazy stuff.
So that's kind of hold my beer and get me another.
Yeah.
Stupid stuff.
Right. It is stupid stuff. Yeah. And so, but again, like you said, or even, for example, the Florida Panthers have won the cup. So they will have what people did, gathered at the stadium and had a party there that night, you know, and then we will have a parade. And the parade, you know, is pretty orderly, and they're riding on buses, waving at people and stuff like that. So that's the difference in what you see at these northern urban cities.
Yeah, I guess I would remember Kansas City won Super Bowl, the Chiefs.
Yeah.
And then somebody got shot at that celebration a few days later. But I think it was a crime of opportunity. Somebody had a grudge, and it was a selective thing. Right,
that just happened to happen. But you did not have major rioting and destruction of property. It wasn't
indiscriminate.
No, the people were just out in the streets having fun. But on the night that they won, they weren't out burning and breaking windows and things like that, in shops and stuff like that. Yeah, it's a
so vandalism. The difference between Midwest values and some of the Eastern liberal leftist progressive.
Right. Right. That's exactly right. And even in LA, I don't recall LA when they win, the people going out in the streets and now, of course, most of what used to be South Central LA, Watts, Compton, you know, that's not Hispanic. It's not black anymore. All the black people,
good point.
All the black people moved to Riverside and San Bernardino.
Really? Up in the hills?
Okay. Yeah. Because I know some that movement were mad.
Well, you have family out there.
Well, yeah, but these are other friends, black friends that have moved.
Yeah, you've gone to visit, so you've seen that.
They don't. Yeah, so, but yeah, it's pretty much Mexican owned now. All of the Mexican realtors have come in and bought up. Well, used to be known as Watts in South Central, and then Compton, which used to have the reputation of being murder capital of the world.
I just remembered in the Rodney King riots, Rush Limbaugh commenting on this Korean-owned shop where the family, and they're truly family-run businesses, the guys stood on the roof on the front edge of the building, and they were shooting would-be looters.
They're still doing it. They're still doing it at these new the anti-Trump rallies.
Yeah,
that are you've got the Koreans that nobody's messing with, burning cars in front of their stores.
And you know, because what happened is they called out the National Guard, right, to deploy them right away, but they weren't armed. All of the armaments were up in Sacramento, and they had to wait for their arms, and so they just for 2 more days. Riots went on and all kinds of suffering. And most of it was minority owned businesses because it was South Central LA, except the Koreans. And Rush Limbaugh said, you know, this sets back gun control a decade. Because when there's lawlessness, folks, it's up to you to protect your family, your property, your liberty.
They're AR-15s, and they're out there. Come and get you some, as they say. Come and get you some.
And it's interesting because what happened in the rioting in Ferguson, remember the old hands up, don't shoot, and that was a scam because that guy truly was a thug.
Oh, I remember.
But the black folk got worked up and they destroyed black-owned businesses. Yeah. And so, the local group of Oath Keepers started arming the black business shops.
Right.
And Stuart Rhodes disassociated the national organization from, because gun rights are important, but not black folk. They can't have guns. Stuart just showed his bigotry there.
Well, that's true. And as I point out in my book, that what's really funny, that gun control was initiated, that whole movement towards gun control was initiated by Ronald Reagan and the NRA.
Yeah, boy, you keep reminding us of that.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to remind you, but the NRA is not guiltless. They're trying to now get back what they gave up back in California. And what happened, this was in the late 60s when the Black Panther Party was pretty much running amok in Oakland, California. Mm-hmm. And they were at the Oakland steps. If you remember, if you want to go back, look at these photos of the Black Panthers in Oakland on the City Hall court steps, the steps out there. Mm-hmm. With shotguns and weapons and bandoliers, gun belts all around, just looking very menacing. And this caused Ronald Reagan to initiate gun control in California, and the NRA supported it. And then it grew and became a national movement. So many of the bad things that happen in America come from California, and that was one of them. But I do want to point out where the fault is when the fault is there. And in this case, it was Ronald Reagan and the NRA that actually initiated gun control laws in America.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a sad.
How dare you speak such
negative on St. Ronald?
Of St. Ronald, yeah.
I have to tell you, I watch his speeches and see his speeches, and he has absolutely the greatest speeches. I mean, the only one that can outdo JFK was Ronald Reagan, but that guy had some great, and they were all right on, and I believe in all of them. But then his actions in office sometimes, like that as governor, and we have Martin Luther King holiday. He's the one who gave us the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. Yeah. And he also he's the first one to give amnesty to the illegal migrants.
Yeah.
These are things that our St. Ronald did that we don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
Now, overall, his speeches and everything that he apparently stood for was right on. It was good. But at the same time, some of the practical things he did were not so conservative minded. Okay. Yeah. And it's kind of sad, same with Bush, the Bushes, they were even worse. And so it's not how you talk your talk. It's how you walk your walk.
A couple of days ago, or was it not yesterday, this day before, we celebrated Juneteenth as a federal holiday. And I got some attention when I wrote something here, Eddie. I'd like to just read it real quickly. As you celebrate Juneteenth, don't forget that when Juneteenth happened, all of Oklahoma Indian Territory was still practicing slavery. The civilized tribes owned massive chattel slaves and were still legally allowed to continue slavery after the Civil War. The autonomy they were promised, this happened under the autonomy they were promised when they moved to Oklahoma, that was then called Indian Territory. Now, Greenwood LaFleur lost his slaves in Greenwood, Mississippi, but his tribesmen in Oklahoma, he was principal chief of the Choctaw Indians. his fellow Choctaws got to keep their slaves, even though he lost his. And all poor Mr. LaFleur got out of the deal was a street in Tulsa named after him, Greenwood.
In an entire district.
Yes. Well, at that time, it was just called Greenwood Avenue.
But he ended up getting
Yeah. Is it, the fond affections of that Black activists have for Tulsa's Greenwood Avenue. It must be the fond memories their granddads had of picking cotton in the hot sun in LaFleur County, Mississippi. So I posted that, and it's interesting. An old childhood friend of mine happened to post a response to that. She's actually a professor of political science at Iowa State University, Karen Kudrowski. Karen and I go way back to childhood days. We're good friends. She had a couple of things here. She said, this is very interesting and shows the complexity of American history. Thanks for posting. Karen, if you're watching, glad to be of service. Say hi to Mark and your family for me.
But there's a broader issue with Juneteenth, as you know, because you posted on my response. Mine was a lot longer.
Yeah.
But see, yours, here's the problem with yours. Oklahoma was Indian Territory, or Oklahoma Territory at the time. It wasn't actually a state.
Right. It was a territory.
Right. It was a territory. So that kind of, I'm with you. Slavery was not totally eradicated on Juneteenth, but overall, the whole holiday, I have a problem with it, as you saw in my post, and that is that they have stolen and hijacked a local celebration.
Yeah.
Juneteenth was celebrated because a military general came to Galveston, Texas, and announced that freedom had arrived. And that was on 19th of June, 1865. Okay. And so it was a local celebration for many years. And then Texas adopted it as a state celebration, Juneteenth. Then all of a sudden, they decided to, under Barack Obama's when this whole thing started, and then eventually under Donald Trump, pushing it as a national holiday. And part of the reason they did make it a national holiday, I think, and pushed it so hard was specifically because of Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah. Tulsa's the reason.
Right. So, but my issue is the bigger issue. Forget the Indian Territory, but nationally, the Emancipation Proclamation at the front end, which he actually wrote in 1862. It was ratified on January 1st of 2021. 1965 is when it actually, but even then, because it was not in all 50 states, or it wasn't 50 states, however many, 30 some states, maybe 40 some states at the time in 1865. Well, I don't know how many states.
The Emancipation Proclamation, he excluded everything except the Confederate States.
Right.
He still allowed slavery in Kentucky and Maryland because they stayed with the Union.
Right. But there was the implication that it was ending. And with the war, then they came in and decided to totally eradicate it, because the emancipation occurred in all the territories at the time.
And all that is an executive order.
Right. It's an executive order. But then on December 13th of 1865, the entire Congress of the United States actually abolished slavery with the 13th Amendment.
Right.
That's what ended slavery. And so to me, now we can't have a holiday on December 13th because we've already got Christmas, Hanukkah, you got, those big ones there. So it would have been harder to, when you load up too many holidays in a time. So I guess that's why they didn't do it.
Well, yeah, but see, I took a proactive role in this. I went to our legislature before Congress made a Juneteenth national holiday. And because the last slaves in Oklahoma were freed on the third Monday in January of 1967. And I wanted that declared as Freedman Day on the third Monday in January. What national holiday is that? ML King Day.
Yeah.
We can use the same day and make it 2 holidays.
That's interesting. Yeah.
There you go.
Now, that should be, well, not a national, it should be a state holiday.
Right. I want it as a state thing, but to serve as an example to James Langford, because he was the guy pushing for this as an appeasement.
Right. So, he's got so many.
Yeah.
He's selling us down the river.
The lawmaker that I wanted to have run this, and that they ran out of time that year.
Yeah. So that would be a much better thing to do. They could have, made a city, which it already was, but then develop into a state holiday if they went to in Texas, Juneteenth.
Yeah.
But the national celebration should be the celebration of the Emancipation Proclamation, and then or December 13th, when the 13th amendment was ratified.
Yeah, but see, in Oklahoma, that's not when slavery ended. So at least in Oklahoma, it should be the third Monday in January. Because
as a state holiday.
As a state holiday.
Right. I'm talking about as a national holiday.
Right.
You can make it because that's actually when the nation. I mean, if you're going to say that, why don't you say 4th of July doesn't apply?
Our nation is currently 50 states.
Right.
But the last place where slavery was legal, the very last place was Indian Territory.
Okay.
That's when it ended, 1967, the third Monday in January. That's when it's completed.
Yeah, you're repeating yourself.
Right.
This is one of these times when we have
I'm saying it applies nationally because that's when it was finally universal.
But it wasn't, because it was Indian Territory where it took place, not nationally. The national was whoever the nation was at the time.
The territory is not part of the nation?
No, not as a state, officially as a state.
Yeah.
Like the 13 colony, a lot of those that weren't the 13 colonies weren't part of America at that time. Okay. Yeah. And as far as the initiation of slavery, that happened in Virginia in 1856 is when slavery actually began in the 13 colonies.
1656. You said 18.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. 1656. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm saying. I am all for a state holiday.
Yeah.
For the
I'll be honest,
for the freedmen.
As a conservative, I like the fact that you didn't have the waste of another federal holiday and time off at the taxpayer's expense. That's why I like that third Monday in January. I'll be honest with you. It just is so ironic that.
Well, no, I'm saying, but you can make it a state holiday on the third Monday in January. I mean, now we're hacking over to the day when
I wanted the federal government to do that because look how many billions of dollars it costs us in wages to give a paid holiday to all the million government workers
in Oklahoma.
No, I'm talking the whole nation. That's why I wanted them to follow our lead.
Okay,
that's why
I'm lost. Yeah. I'm lost because I think we're talking apples and oranges here.
Yeah, instead of doing Juneteenth, I wanted them to do.
I don't think we should do Juneteenth. Period.
Right. I was given a diversion that wouldn't cost us anything.
Well, I don't care about the cost. It's the principle. It's the principle of the holiday. It belongs to Galveston, Texas.
You're right. It's a local thing.
Right.
And
if you're going to talk national, then it's when emancipation occurred.
Imagine,
or the 13th Amendment. In fact, there's a friend of mine, we've talked to him on here, who wrote the 13th Amendment Freedom Book.
Yeah.
It's about this thick. Mm-hmm. And he runs the whole thing down. And one day we need to just go through that book and the history in it. Mm-hmm. For example, I didn't even realize that apparently in the Articles of Confederation, mm-hmm. there was already something in there about freeing the slaves.
Yeah.
And all along, in 1787, when the Constitution was ratified, they also had a stipulation in there about freedom for the slaves. They knew all along that this was unsustainable.
Yep.
This is a lot that's lost in history. The founders, of the nation, they realized, George Washington, Jefferson, Adams, all these guys, they knew that we could not maintain the status of slavery as we had it. But the problem is when you have 10 million people that have a certain, let's say, it's the same with the Mexican immigrants, or wherever they're from. And all of a sudden you say, okay, now everybody's done. They can't be citizens. And, on where are we? July 1st, every Mexican is gone, right? You would throw the country into chaos.
You're right.
Because of all the work they do.
That's right.
And that's what happened with the slaves. And so they knew they could not just free all of these 10 million people in slavery.
Right.
And then what do you do with them?
Well, they did it incrementally. First, they had a ban on more slaves being imported, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they were weaning us off of dependence.
That's what exactly. And yeah.
But you grew up post World War II, born in Germany, and beginning on D-Day, certain parts of Europe became liberated, right? And Juneteenth is just when the liberators happened to get down to Galveston.
Right.
And so there was a day, you were born in, was it Nuremberg? Okay. There was a day that the Allied troops came and freed Nuremberg of German occupation.
Right.
It would be like saying, that's the end of World War II.
Right.
And no, that's just the end of it in my town.
Right.
Next week, it'll be the next town over.
Yeah. Or another kind of reverse example would be the Japanese army guys that were on these remote islands.
Oh, yeah.
I think the last one they
remember
found,
the 70s we found a guy.
I thought it was the 60s. Yeah. But let's put it this way. It was at least 20 years after
he finally surrendered, came out of his cave in the South Pacific. I forget that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, does that mean the war was still going on? It was in his mind. For him, yeah. And so that's kind of how it was, the holdout of certain areas. And to be honest, in fact, I will tell you this. There was a book that I read when I was a young Christian, The Emancipation of Robert Sadler. I'm surprised I remember it.
Wow.
Just all of a sudden, boom, The Emancipation of Robert Sadler. And then they changed the name of it. Lord, help me remember. Lord, help me forget. They changed the name of the book. I don't know why they did that. The Emancipation of Robert Sadler was better. But anyway, you might be able to find that book. Anyway, he was born in the 1900s, and he was a slave in, I believe it was South Carolina, one of the Carolinas. Him and his sister, his whole family basically, were still slaves in South Carolina as late as the 1900s. And then he ended up becoming a Christian and a traveling evangelist. And it's quite an interesting, make you weep at certain points, but it's a pretty phenomenal story about this slave in the 20th century named Robert Sadler, and how he met Jesus and the whole thing. So anyway, it's something I would really encourage you, if you get a chance, to look it up. If you can find the book, I don't know. I'm sure somebody. Yeah. In fact, I wanted to see if I could get the rights to the book and have it reprinted myself and start, giving them out to people. Sure. But it was such a. It was very important to me. I think I read it like my first 1 or 2 years as a Christian, and some of the things that I learned through that, just as far as forgiveness and that. See, a lot of people don't understand why I am so adamantly opposed to a lot of the modern racial issue things, because I've seen too many people. I've seen too many things. I know too much about how this whole issue of race has been manipulated. And I tried to put it in this book because it deals with a lot of those issues. Ultimately, there's one thing that needs to occur, and that is forgiveness. Yes. Forgiveness. And we always talk about with God that he casts our sins into the sea of forgetfulness. Okay. In other words, it's like it never happened because of the blood of Jesus. Black Americans cannot let it go. And the more they can't let it go, the more it seethes within them. Yeah. And it creates all kinds of issues and problems. Yeah. And those that give into that, this capitulation to, and of course, a lot of it is manipulation. There are a lot of people that like it, because they can make merchandise.
Yes, they exploit it, don't they?
Exploit it, exactly. Black and white. Mm-hmm. And I just want people to truly be free from guilt, be free from fear, free from wrath, all of those things.
Bitterness, yeah.
Bitterness, and you can only do that if you let it go.
Your book, subtitle, How Blaming Others is Not a Winning Strategy.
Right.
Exactly. Booker T. Washington, will teach that. He had no time for that. Right. Pointing the finger, he says, I have an opportunity to make me better. And that I can impact, that I can control is me. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So, boy, I don't know what else you want to get into, but I'm definitely think the Tucker versus Ted.
Yeah, okay. What is the deal there? I have to say, it began as Tucker against Trump, and then it ended up going, and he apologized to Donald Trump.
That happened before the Ted.
Right.
Ted
and then
Tucker calls
then he turns around and goes after Ted Cruz because Ted doesn't remember where in the Bible
a scripture is, or what the latest population census of Iran is, depending on who. And I love one thing about Ted Cruz. He exposed some of the cheap debate tricks that Tucker employs. And he enunciated. He said, there you go with that mockery laugh again. Or, and it's annoying. And it's a very prep school thing to try to discredit somebody because they can't recite to you a fact that you happen to know as though it's important.
Right.
It doesn't matter if the population of Iran is 94 million or 49 million. But if you don't know that, then clearly you're not as educated, as Tucker, and therefore Tucker's supreme. That's a logical, cheap trick. In debate, it'll get you kicked off the debate team, and Tucker needed to be called out on that. I think one of the things I liked also that Ted said, I'm not a war hawk and I'm not an isolationist. And I think the discretion of not being in either ditch, because I think either of them is a ditch. I thought he did a pretty good job of that. At times he got very frustrated. At times, and this was Tucker's production. He interviewed him, and I just think Tucker came across. He lost more out of it. Kind of like what's his name?
I think he lost big on it.
Yeah,
I think it really hurts him. There are those diehard Tucker Carlson fans that will want to go after Ted Cruz, but it sure turned me off. I was just shocked. I'm thinking, what is wrong with him? Why is he doing this? And I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if his Catholicism doesn't affect his thinking.
Tucker, he's Episcopal, close to Catholic.
But, I thought he was Catholic.
No,
it sounded like he was. Okay.
But it reminded me of the debate that I saw on Joe Rogan, a libertarian and comedian Dave Smith had with Doug Murray. Murray pulled a lot of those cheap tricks. And in fact, then after that, Dave Smith is being interviewed by Tucker, and Tucker's calling out Doug Murray for these cheap debate prep school tactics, he called it. And then Tucker just gave me the term for me to point at Tucker and say, you're doing the same cheap shot stuff.
Yeah. I don't know. What the deal is. The other one is Candace Owen. Mm-hmm. She's another one.
Oh, yeah. I think she's far more volatile and trashing Israel, just generally trashing the Israeli government.
Yeah.
I think this might be the Israeli government's finest hour globally, because the Arab countries are like, don't want to pat them on the back. But thank God somebody's doing something about Iran, because Saudis hate Iran.
Oh, yeah. Well, sure.
You know? Yeah. I've got a neighbor.
Well, they're threatened by him because the mullah, if that takes off in Saudi Arabia, the monarchy is gone.
How many times has Iran shut down the Straits of Hormuz, keeping Saudi oil from reaching markets? Right. You know, I have some neighbors of mine. I'm becoming better friends with them. They're both husband and wife are from Iran. The other day I went over to talk to him, Alex. And I said, how's Zari doing? How's your family back in Iran doing? He says, my wife hasn't slept in 3 days. She's like inconsolable. Her family happened to have a little cabin up in the mountains, and they've been up there, scared to death.
Have you seen the lines, car lights leaving?
I mentioned that to him. I said, I saw the traffic jams getting out of trains. He says, you saw that? I said, I saw folks. But see, they claimed they all went on vacation this week.
Yeah. See, that's the difference in Israeli attacks and Iranian attacks. Iran sent missiles over populated areas. I mean, they just want to blow up people and hurt things, whereas Israel blew up strategic military facilities. Yeah, and or people that are affiliated with the regime. So take out all their military leaders. You know, and what they want to do now, of course, the big question is, do we send our B-2 bomber to drop this bunker buster?
I think it's clear to me after I'm hearing all this that to really get the job done requires our 30,000-pound bombs. There are several bombs, they said, are all in the class called bunker busters. But the one you want, I forget the specific name, is 30,000 pounds. And they said what they normally do, it's a combination.
2 bombs.
One bomb goes in.
Makes a hole.
Right. And then the next one behind it. But what I'm hearing from military experts is it's going to be probably a 10-phase thing, where you keep going and keep going and keep going deeper and deeper.
Oh, wow.
And the first
there won't be anything left.
Yeah, that Moab can go down a couple hundred feet.
Yeah, well, the first part of it goes 200 feet. Mm-hmm. And then the next one comes in and blows a hole. I don't know how many.
It's more explosive than penetration.
Right. But if what you're saying is right, then they'll send another one to do this 200 feet deeper, boom, and then.
But the logic of it doesn't work, because when you've got a channel you put down, debris is going to fill it back in. Right. And so the next one will go another 200 feet. You might get 100.
But there will be a crater.
Yeah, at least you break up the ground. You got fallow ground.
Right.
And so I think that's a concern. I think Trump's going to say, okay, we're going to do it. Oh, and by the way, my Iranian friend has been following. He told me a couple of days ago, he says, this last night, the B-2 bombers coming out of Missouri spent the night in London. He said this morning they're in Tel Aviv. You know, so he's watching this.
So they're already.
And he's literally saying the people of Iran are seeing these B-2 bombers as their salvation.
Yeah, that's the thing the especially the resistance. There is a resistance there, and an opposition to the Ayatollahs and the whole religious leadership. And so there will be dancing in the streets, and we have not. The one thing we have not done, or Israel has not done, is taken out their religious leaders. They've taken out the military leaders. Yeah. But I mean, honestly, if you really want to, well, see, this is the question, though. If you take out the religious leader, okay, are you going to create more of a resistance among the devout Muslims to be so angry that then they will really coalesce? So I think that's kind of the whole issue here.
Yeah.
Or it's much better to let the religious leaders lose favor, depose them, and let them put them back in the mosque where they belong. I
think you're absolutely right. Here's the difference between the first Trump administration and the second. Trump is 10 times the president he was 8 years ago. And it's this, remember a couple months ago, Israel was all set to go, right? And we didn't hear a whole lot. Now we're finding out. Trump made a deal with Israelis. Give me 60 days. And if they don't come to something you can accept, after 60 days, I won't stand in your way. Mm-hmm. On day 61, they went. Did Trump stand in their way? No, he gave his word. Israel gave him the 60 days he asked for. Now he's keeping his good faith with Israel.
Right.
But here's the thing. In I'm seeing the left and the globalists, the demagogues, totally trashing it. I heard them say, well, they started out saying this was to end their nuclear problem, and now all of a sudden it's regime change. Well, Israel clearly said, we're not going after your political leaders.
Right.
We're going after your military and your nuclear people. And they did. They took out 9 of the 10 top scientists within minutes of each other. Precise. They won't even say how.
Right. And military leaders too.
Right. But those 9, one of them, he survived till the next day and he's gone now too. And there's several others, but the top 10 are out. And it's your brain trust that's the most important.
Right.
So, and then the military leaders. And I mean, if you're Iranian and they said, we've got a promotion for you, you're now a general, I don't think you want to take it.
It's not necessarily good news. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But Israel said, after that first wave hit, said, you come after our civilians, we will come after your military leaders.
Yeah.
So it was Iran's action of the terrorist bombing of Tel Aviv, especially, but all over. They set the terms for their own decapitation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how people, our own resistance, don't understand that.
Yeah.
Unless they just hate Israel. I mean, that's it. There's been a lot of, what's really bothering me, I'm seeing all these Christians posting, or several Christians in Christian, but they're posting about, that Israel is not the Israel of the Bible spoken of by Abraham, in Genesis.
Sure.
That, that God is making a covenant forever with Israel, an everlasting covenant he made. Okay. Well, yeah, but that those Jews that are in Israel now are not really Jews. They're not the Jews that were there in Jesus's time and prior. Have you done a DNA check of every person that's in it? I mean, it's ridiculous that the people were dispersed. They've lived as Jews in every country they've been in. They've been persecuted as Jews in every place they've ever been throughout history. And now all of a sudden you're going to determine that they're not Jews. I mean, yes, there are a lot of people who have converted to Judaism. Yes, that's true.
That's a religion. That's not an ethnicity.
Right.
You got to separate those two.
Right.
Logically.
Well, yes. Well, in a sense, because we are considered the new Jew. And
what I'm getting at is the Kurds are fighting for a Kurdish homeland. The Armenians for me. And I think every tribe and ethnicity has a certain place of having a homeland.
Right.
If they choose to. Now, if I want to live in Russia, fine. And if I want to still call myself, Belgian or whatever, fine. But I chose to do that.
Right.
So Israel should have at least the same basic respect as any other tribe or ethnicity.
Well, yeah, sure. And so one way or another, to me, the promise to the Jews, whoever they are, it stands. It stands today. And I'm not going to try to, segregate and separate and say, well, okay, you're a Jew, you're not a Jew, you're a Jew, you're not a Jew. Let's see, you're legitimate, you're not legitimate, you're this, you're this, you're this. We've not been asked to do that. Okay. Paul was pretty clear when he said that just because you're born a Jew does not make you a Jew. Okay. But at the same time, if you go to the 10th chapter of Romans, where he says, are we then to basically cast them away and forget about them? He said, no, because they are still God's people.
Yeah.
So it's a delicate balance that we have to observe, because to come against Israel, to me, that's the quickest way to be on God's bad side.
Yeah.
Personally, that's my opinion. Okay.
Yeah. God made.
Oh, one last thing. And when I say that, let me say this. There are bad Jews.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
They killed Jesus.
No, the Romans killed Jesus.
They had the Romans kill Jesus.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. But what I'm saying, I'm talking about just bad people today.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Jewish mafia, Jewish underworld. You got Jewish, and if you ever watch any Jewish television, there's some of the most vulgar people in the world too. So even that festival where they were taken away, it was pretty much a hedonistic festival that they.
Oh yeah. It definitely was.
Right. So I'm not speaking on spiritual grounds, okay, but nevertheless, they are an example. To me, it's a greater example of the fact that we as Christians, when we sin, God doesn't just cast us aside and kill us and say, you're going to hell.
Yeah.
He knows who you are. He knows the covenant he made with you if you are a believer in the sacrificial offering of Jesus Christ. So anyway, God is not going to break any covenants, any lies, and he may deal aggressively with you as he has with the Jews periodically throughout history, but that doesn't mean he's not going to forgive and bring them back.
Right. You remember Hagar despairing for her life and that of her son Esau. And you remember, as we read the Bible, the promises God made and the love and the care. You know what? If Hagar and Esau are close to God's heart, they're close to my heart too. You remember, I said Esau is Ishmael.
Ishmael, yeah, I'm sorry.
But now let's move to Esau and Jacob. God made promises to both of them. They were both sons of Jacob, right?
Isaac. Isaac, yeah.
But then God also made promises to Jacob, and they were for Jacob and his 12 sons, which were called the tribes of Israel, right? The tribes of Jacob. So it's important that we each pay attention to those. What does God want me to do? And don't be against anybody who's not sharing my calling and my destiny. God has a destiny for Ishmael. God has a destiny for Esau. And God holds them accountable too.
Yeah.
And this is the problem, the hatred and the intolerance that you see in this tribalism that we talked about for years.
Yeah. And, within Christianity, within the church, you have now this replacement theology. And it's very troubling to me. In other words, replacement theology says that God replaced his chosen people, Israel, with Christians. that Christian. This is the exact. We're reliving the Crusades, and no, we didn't. He did not replace Judaism with Christianity. He did not replace the Jews with Christians. He, in fact, again, Romans, we are grafted in. They are the root. They are the tree. We are grafted in. We need to be thankful that we have been grafted in to take part in this promise and blessing, not to, just get rid of them. We're it now. We're it. That is the theology that is prevalent right now. And it's dangerous. It's a dangerous.
If you read what Peter said to the church in his general epistle, you are a holy nation, a royal priesthood, a set apart people. Yet you might show forth the praises. He was called you out of darkness into his glorious light. And here's the thing. Jesus said, let your light shine before all men, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. The church has a different calling in manifesto, and that is to impact all the world within and throughout, and be a part of, and be God's ambassadors. Go ye into all the world. That's different than what he told Israel, told Jacob, told, those tribes. They're doing their thing, and you have to trust that God bless and guide them and keep them from falling under his judgment, as they have in the past, right? They ended up being taken captive to Nebuchadnezzar, and it was a great Persian king named Cyrus, or Kuras, as my neighbor tells me is the Persian pronunciation. But I talked about how great a king Kuras was, and boy, did my neighbor have pride, because the Persians are very proud people.
Yeah. And which is Iranians, basically.
Right. But tribally, they're Persia, the ancient nation of Persia.
Yeah, Media Persia.
Yes. And so they, and I said, God prophesied to the Jews about Kuras years before he was born. And what a great thing he's going to do to accomplish God's calling and destiny for Israel, who were under his occupation. So the people of Persia and the people of Israel don't have to be at odds. They can work together as they have in the past.
Yeah, and they should. But
and my neighbor's fine with that. He hates the religious oppression that his family is dealing with, and his wife's family is. And so if we do this right, and I think Trump has the discretion and the deportment and the self-control to do this right, but we've got to see the people of Iran say, okay, mullahs, you had your chance. We're done with you now.
Yeah, no, I'm with Trump, where he says the Iranian has some very nice people. The Iranians that I've met here are just the nicest people. They're very, very nice people. They just have been co-opted by an evil group that decided we want it our way.
Yeah. I heard an anthropologist on the news just in the last couple of days saying, of all the nations of the Middle East, over the last century, the most westernized is Iran. Mm-hmm. We wouldn't know it if you were born in the last 20, 30 years.
Right.
But they truly are.
Yeah. And so we don't, it's like the revelation I had when Sting wrote the song, Russians Love Their Children Too. Mm-hmm. That Russians are not just all evil people. They're just humans that love their children, family, and so forth. Yeah. They've just been led to a certain behavior. Yeah. And Iranians are that way. And the worst though, now, where I do have a problem, there are certain seeming ethnic traits. Palestinians are a different group. Palestinians, which basically comes from the word Philistine, and are Philistines basically, and they just seem to have this. I don't know. It's different. Let's just put it that way. There's a different group of people. They're constantly attacking. It's funny now you mentioned, because we talked about Ishmael. What did God say in his prophecy about Ishmael? that he would always be an adversary with his brother. Remember?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But so Ishmael is just like that. And it's like the Palestinians, they're constantly at war or at odds with not just Israel, but with each other. I mean,
you think by God saying that God wants him to be constantly fighting with his brother?
I don't think God wants it
exactly,
but He set it into motion, and it just is how it can. Does God want you to go to hell? Does He want anybody to go to hell?
Yeah, okay, but Eddie, you're seen in our community as a black man, but you're not like the Jesse Jackson, L. Sharpton black folk. Okay, you don't fall under their influence,
right?
And it is a toxic dump to listen to them.
Yeah.
And you choose not to. And I'm saying to you, Eddie, the people of Gaza under Hamas control, it's an entirely different culture than the West Bank has become. It's much more integrated.
Well, sure. Yeah. You have what do you call them? Muslims, Palestinians on the in the government of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
So they have seats in the actual Knesset.
Right.
You don't have that anywhere else.
Right. But you go past East Jerusalem over to the Jordan, that area that we call the West Bank, right?
Right.
That area has truly started. It's taken 50 years since 67, but they truly have become that. And much more than Gaza is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sure.
Because Gaza is where the PLO people end up going. They just constantly wanted to stir up things. Because, there's not a lick of difference between Yasser Arafat and the PLO leader and the Jesse Jackson, the Al Sharptons. Well, they are what did J.C. Watts call them? The race baiters, the poverty pimps, that just needed the people to be bitter instead of successful.
Yeah, what's sad, most of them live in Switzerland.
Yeah.
That the leaders, they're living in Europe.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult situation. And bottom line, as far as the U.S. is concerned, we kind of need to just stay out of it. I have mixed emotions about the B-2 bombers. Now, I understand what Trump is saying. He's not dropping a bomb on the Iranian people. He is specifically targeting a nuclear facility that he says they cannot have a nuclear bomb.
That's Trump's objective.
Right. That's Trump's.
Just that.
That's it. And so if the B-2 bombers going in and destroying that one facility, then that's different.
Yeah. And it's not killing masses.
Right. That's what.
It's beating up a rock.
Yeah.
Right. A big rock, a mountain.
A rock or Iraq. No.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, so it's a tough situation, and he's not getting any help. We're not getting any help from the left and the Democrats, who are going to try to find something wrong with every decision.
Yeah, and that's just
makes.
Trump derangement syndrome.
Yep, that's true. That is TDS. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. We need to wrap it up. Do you have anything state or local more that you want to
Unless you want to mention something about a lawsuit, but if you want to hold off on that.
Oh man, we should probably hold off because that'll take us another 30 minutes at least. So let's hold off on that. So anyway, we've had a couple of guests today, and we've discussed sports, and we've discussed the Israeli situation. And the only thing I can really say to add is pray for Israel, pray for Jerusalem, pray for Israel, and pray for the United States of America.
Hey, I do want to say, just wrapping up quickly, a G7 meeting up in Canada went, I think, very well. And I think this timing that Trump left early kind of kept him from being kowtowed and hammered and beat up. He did get to sign in front of all these global leaders, great economies, his the UK deal, the trade deal he did.
Right.
So now we're doing great with England. There was one other thing.
And China too, I think. It seems to be on again, off again, on again, off. I don't know where we're at.
It's going to be official when either Trump goes over there or G comes here. So, and Trump has been talking about something. He posted up. He says, right now, our Fed prime rate is 4.5%. On his True Social, he put up a chart of central banks' interest rates. And Canada, European Union, and most of the more developed countries are like about half or less what the Fed's doing to us. And he made a strong case for how much more it's costing us in our debt, servicing our debt at this higher interest rate. And it really brings a case. Is the Fed, which is a private corporation, are they really exploiting the debt of the United States to just line their own pockets?
Well, as many of you that listen to our podcast or watch our podcast every week know, I watch Fox Business News. Mm-hmm. That's my go-to morning and early evening. But anyway, they postulated on there, several people, that the Jay Powell thing is a political thing.
Oh, well, yes.
That they're, and he runs the Fed, mm-hmm. and essentially the Fed is keeping the interest rate high just because they don't like Trump.
Well, that's what they're saying. But Trump made an argument when he showed this chart, and it showed like 50 countries.
Oh, no, listen, You're always arguing about that where there's no argument. Yes, I understand.
Yeah, I'm just saying that is not the same argument as what Fox says the real problem is.
No. Okay, let me break this down, how it's related. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's obvious that if everybody else's interest rates are lower than ours and we're paying a whole lot more, we should be dropping our interest rate. Right. But Powell, because of political reasons, won't drop the interest rate. That's all I'm trying to say.
For whatever reason. I mean, they say it's political reason.
They say it's political. Yeah. Well, why else would it be?
To scam us for money. Again, the Fed collects and keeps that money.
Yeah, but but see, that's a losing proposition. I just think Powell particularly hates Donald Trump and maybe some of the other governors, but because there's no reason for it. There's no, and he's really put a knife at his own throat because it's becoming more and more obvious because of what you just said, that if every other country is dropping theirs and it's costing us a whole, then the Fed's not making any money, but we're actually, and see, he's fighting a battle he can't win because Trump's tariffs are generating billions of dollars now. Mm-hmm. to help us with our debt and everything else. And so it's just, he's digging a deeper and deeper hole.
Yeah. Now, in full disclosure, Trump showed about 50 some countries, right? Well, there are a lot of countries Trump didn't show, such as Mexico, which right now their prime rate is double.
Well, yeah,
with the Fed.
Right.
Now, that's because their economy has been growing like crazy. And you heard Peter Zahn, all these people saying Mexico is a better place to put your factory than China. Mexico, your cost of doing business is much lower than China.
Yeah, that's true.
And so all these global countries, and especially because Mexico has a deal with the United States, the USMCA, that really limits the tariffs. So these countries are, let's put something in Mexico. Now, Mexico's coming down. They've been coming down really fast here in the last few months. Yeah. But they were at 11%. They're down to 8%. And they said there's probably going to be 2 more rate drops in the next month. So I just, in full disclosure, Trump didn't mention Mexico because it took away from his argument.
Well, yeah, but I could have mentioned Uganda. Mm-hmm. Uganda, their rate was something like 25% or something outrageous if you want to invest your money in a Ugandan bank. Mm-hmm. But again, it's risky business. You know, is it going to remain stable? Are they going to seize your money or are they going to lock it in where you can't, oh, by the way, you're good news, bad news, you're a millionaire. The bad news is a millionaire in Uganda, but not anywhere else because you can't spend it anywhere else. Yeah. So that kind of thing. So, and where, to say Mexico is burgeoning and so forth, that's always teetering on, being lost. If you're smart and can do some short-term, investing and so forth, you can make some money, but you got to be really good and careful to be able to, stop.
Yeah. And there are other things. Around. Like, deficit, government printing more money. Well, yeah, you're going to have inflation, and guess who's going to try to rein it in? The central bank by interest rates.
Right.
Right. So anyway, that was something I felt was worth responding to.
Right. But bottom line, I think, in a way, I think Powell actually is doing Trump a favor by keeping the rates where they are and forcing us and showing that this economy under his leadership. Oh, here's the other thing. Oh man, we're going to keep going. Okay. What is the name of his Secretary of Treasury?
Besant.
Scott Besant. Yeah, I didn't realize that he was homosexual or gay.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that. And he's got several of them that he's put in very important and powerful positions.
Rich Grinnell.
Yeah, Rich Grinnell, exactly. So it's funny to me that the gay lobby is so adamantly against Trump because they've been fed the same line of BS as the black community, that Trump is this devil and bigot, and so forth. Black America has awakened. Now it's time for the rest, the women, gays, third worlders that are legal citizens here, everybody. They need to wake up and realize that they're being bamboozled by the media.
Yeah.
That Trump is the greatest friend to everybody, every race, creed, color, and sexual orientation even.
Yeah.
And yet he wants to tell everybody, but you've got to behave. You've got to live within the norms and confines of the Declaration of Independence and the laws of the United States of America.
Yeah. So J.D. Vance was speaking to Joe Rogan back last January. Maybe even before the election. Yeah, it was. And he said, he says there was a time when people were gay, just want to be left alone. And he said, there's still a lot of people like that.
Yeah,
they don't want to make their lifestyle everybody else's business.
Right.
And J.D. Vance, he says, I think those folks that just want to be left alone and they're not trying, he says, they're going to side with Trump because Trump truly doesn't want to impose, through social change, all these policy things. Yeah. And my daughter was talking to me the other day. She was over and I just, she mentioned some of her friends who are gay and some of the kids she grew up with that have kind of come out and that. And I said, well, Amy, I said, it's not my business unless they make it my business. Right. It's the people that want to shove it in your face. They're the tyrants. They're the ones that are intolerant.
Yeah. Oh, obvious. Never mind. We'll stop. We got to stop because I will get going again on a whole new issue.
We don't want to hear him.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening, everybody.
Yes. Thank you to Jake Merrick and to Justin Hornbeck.
Yes. And we hope everybody has a wonderful week and may the rain stop at some point here because it's crazy.
And the humidity dry out.
Yeah.
Go Thunder!
Thunder up.